Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Moonshot NFT Podcast. It is great to see you all again. I'm your host, Elliott Bottrell, joined in the flesh once again by my wonderful co-host, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Very, very well. It's good to be back in the room. It's been a while since we've done this in person, but
Back in the studio.
It feels right. It feels good. Much better than the Zoom alternative. Although that's been working well, right? Hopefully anyone listening along has not been too disappointed by the fact that we're doing it remotely. But it seems to work. But it is nice to be back in the same room talking all things NFTs.
Back in the studio, ready for business. And so a lot has been happening in the world of NFTs, an awful lot. And so we want to run through today kind of some recent events, some big topical things that have been happening and our thoughts on it. We've just rounded up actually our kind of January Moonshot DAO investment report to all of our investors in the DAO, diving into a few bits of key NFT sort of market news, which I'm sure we'll explore today as well. But yeah, Matt, it's been a very hectic week in the world of NFTs. I know you've been keeping tabs on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've read some. So I should probably credit the source because I get an email newsletter from. It's called coincidentally To the Moon by this company or outfit called NFT Evening, and every couple of days, pretty much every time they have a news story or a kind of newsworthy story, which seems to be every 2 to 3 days at the moment, they send an email newsletter. And so they were saying that January sales, in January, kind of there was a bit of a bounce back for NFTs with sales of a total of $945 million worth of NFT sales in January in just 1 month alone.
That is ridiculous.
Which is nuts.
That is really puts into perspective, even during what is considered a bit of downtime in the market. Still, was it $975 million? Dollars of NFTs were bought and sold in January.
It's unbelievable. Apparently that's 40 odd % increase compared with December. But still, it just really shows that there is still, even when people, our last episode, I remember one of the questions, we talked through some frequently asked questions, and one of them was, are NFTs dead or whatever it was? And if you think, in some markets, a lot of markets, even the construction market that our day job is in, or my day job is in, like for 900 plus million to be spent in 1 month, is a colossal amount, and I think it shows just how much is going on.
That'd be a pretty good month for. It
would be a great month for our
right?
business. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we can take kind of. Well, certainly one insight from that is, even though at the moment we've definitely seen an uptick in the number of kind of active NFT traders turn the start of the new year, but it is still at really quite low levels considering where it once was, and particularly where you think about where NFTs are in the sort of curve of adoption and where they are in mass adoption and how early a lot of these things are still perceived. But for that volume of cash to be going through, I think it shows like at the moment there's a lot of seriously big players, big retail players, and almost kind of like institutional players, because I know a lot of this trading will be coming from other DAOs like ourselves who are eating up a lot of things. And as we're going to talk about, some of these ultra rare NFT assets that are being sold for, the ridiculous sums to these very, very high profile either corporations or just collectors. Right?
Yeah, and to that point, just another staggering kind of figure. Apparently, so of all NFT projects and marketplaces, I guess, Ethereum is still by far leading the way with a total of $36 billion worth in all-time sales as of January 2023. So 36 billion.
That is ridiculous.
Isn't that mad?
That is mad. That is mad. That is a seriously big number.
When you think about how new it is, when you think about like how uncertain people are about it, how much people talk about risk and scams and this thing and how, and I go back to the point, like, are they dead? Like $36 billion worth. I mean,
definitely not dead. Sounds pretty alive to me.
It's crazy.
And again, we're only at the sort of precipice of all of this really taking off. And so I think that's numbers kind of a testament to all of the interest that still is maintaining, and all of the stuff that, you know, these companies, these individuals that are at the heart of the NFT world at the moment are still plowing along and are still getting involved with some seriously sizable chunks of cash. So I know there's been a lot of pretty big sales recently. Let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, so definitely some recent CryptoPunk activity, which is always good to see. And some, just especially in this market, some crazy numbers. Like within the past 2 weeks, there was a 24-hour period where 3 or 4 punks, all hooded punks, so the ones with hoods, were sold for, I think pretty much the average for each one of them was like 400 ETH a piece.
Wow.
And all in such a short space of time. Didn't look actually whether it's the same person buying or same person selling. I think it was all completely unrelated. Was the impression I got, but like just so much money, almost like 2,000.
So that's like $500,000 sales each.
Yeah,
and like 4 of them going basically one after the other, 2 separate buyers as well. I mean, it gives you a sort of idea of the sort of players that are.
Yeah, and the conviction that people
space.
still have in like what it means to own one, hold one, and perhaps people thinking a bit like we've been talking about for the past few months, which is that it's a real buyer's market at the moment, because even if they were selling for 400 ETH 6 months ago, that was when ETH was like double what it is now.
$2 million territory instead of $500,000 territory, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, 100%. And I think it goes to show that we're seeing a bit of validation around one of the kind of theses around CryptoPunks, that one of the, what's his name? That big investor we talked about before in the finance, who went on the podcast with Kevin Rose, financial services background, has now become a prolific collector.
The Derek Edwards guy? Or
no, there's another guy, Jay something. Anyway, point was, he's on a podcast. He talks about his CryptoPunk thesis, and this is a guy who now owns dozens of punks and has like a multi-million-dollar portfolio of lots of squiggles and lots of other high-profile NFT collections. And he said it really clicked for him when he understood that with these digital assets and the NFTs, and in particular the CryptoPunks, he understands that there's people in the world with extreme amounts of wealth. And as we continue to move into this more and more digital economy, your digital identity becomes ever important. And yes, you can buy fancy cars and fancy mansions and do whatever in real life, and that's one thing. But there's increasing power and almost desire for the ultra rich to want to flex their status online. And what way to do that than with these really high profile, unique collectibles, which they do become the true owners of through the NFT technology. Yeah. And so he said once he understood that, because of course, as an investor in anything, you want to go where the big money's going, because it makes your chance of getting return a hell of a lot easier if the buyers you're up against are buyers with significant sums of cash. And so once that clicked for him, that was when he went all in on CryptoPunks and started buying them all up. And of course, what we have seen since then is CryptoPunks be these, archaeological style hailed assets that have just held their value. And more of these big players, even right now in this buyer's market, are beginning to scoop them up for these crazy prices.
Absolutely. And I think, I was reading a similar story about Chromie Squiggles just the other day, to that exact same point. Like, they are and will be even more so, desired by people that can and will spend a lot of money on them. And so sort of, acquiring any now for those that can, and investors that want to just, make a good move that's going to pay off, who knows how many fold in the future. Mm-hmm. It's still just the perfect time to be able to do it if you can do it, right?
100%. And it's great publicity for the CryptoPunks, right? Because the truth is, with these NFT collections, like just the acts of any of them being bought for these very high amounts of money raises the value of the whole collection, right? Yeah. Because now when someone else is seen to be buying something for X amount of money, that then trickles down into the perceived value of the rest of the collection. And so the more these CryptoPunks go for, and indeed the higher any NFTs and any collections go for, typically then the higher the perceived value of the whole collection. And so of course you're a CryptoPunks holder yourself, so whilst I know yours is doesn't quite have the hood or some of the rare traits, it still must be very satisfying and, fill you with enthusiasm for your investment, seeing these big sales go through, because it's the best kind of publicity ever, right?
No, it does. At the same time, there is always this underlying fear. I'm not going to lie. Like in the, there's a lot of money there, or potential money, I should call it, really, because whoever knows. But there's a lot of potential money there being held in something that is, not as secure as bricks and mortar, or I'd say that. I mean, fires can happen, but you can insure them. Can you insure NFTs? I don't know. But I'm very aware, especially, a story that we'll come on to perhaps now about even the likes of the greats, Kevin Rose,
some of the people you think are the most secure.
Yes.
Goodness me, this was terrible news.
It was crazy. Like, I think we'd actually just finished recording the last episode of this podcast, haven't we? And I jumped onto Twitter afterwards and just saw that my whole feed was filled with like people's shock and horror that Kevin Rose had been hacked or scammed, or I think it was reported as a hack. First of all, someone had stolen over $2 million worth of his NFTs, which included like 25 Chromie squiggles. And if any of our listeners have taken on board anything we've said about Kevin Rose and the Proof community and Proof podcast in the past, then if you've heard him on any podcast, you're bound to have heard him mention how much he loves and how much he respects the Chromie squiggle. And for him to lose 25 of them, the value of them in itself.
Super rare ones as well. So yeah, Kevin Rose, a man who's kind of pioneering the way of NFTs. He's the creator and founder of some of these really big collections, and someone who preaches about security to his members and people in his community. And yeah, he fell victim to, it looked like a bit of a kind of scam, right?
Yeah,
where it's a malicious signature which opened up a backdoor to his wallet. And it was some sort of,
described as sort of, the little bit of reading into it I've done, like described as a very well performed like social engineering scam. So like, he was convinced and taken to a fake link that wasn't what he thought it was going to be. And essentially, he signed a transaction which gave the buyer, gave this person access to, I don't think, not quite whatever they wanted from his wallet, but like a decent chunk of stuff. So yeah, 25 Chromie squiggles, at least one Fidenza, a couple of X copies, I think. So yeah, totaling like $2 million worth apparently of NFTs, which is just crazy, And there was like this outpouring of sort of just pain for him, pain for like, how can anyone stomach that sort of thing? I mean, by the sounds of it, he's,
gut-wrenching feeling, right? Because I mean, we've all had our scares.
Yeah,
you fell victim to a similar kind of scam.
Yeah,
and it's that feeling of violation, right? That flipping heck, all of a sudden, something which you felt was really secure has just been taken from you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had my room burgled once, came back, window knocked through, all my stuff stolen. And that feeling is it's a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
But, luckily, the man Kevin Rose he was only a sprinkling of his selection, not the entire thing. But
it's that irreversible nature, isn't it? You kind of see it. I can just imagine it, because I did when it happened to us, You see what's going on, you see it disappearing, and you just know in that moment there is no way of getting that back.
It just sucks.
So yeah, horrifying. But
and I guess this is a bit of the downside of the whole decentralized nature of the blockchain and these sort of things, because whilst we, the pros of having full custody and control over your wallet, your assets, your digital identity in that sense is a very good thing. Similarly, you have to be therefore entirely responsible for every interaction that you do and have responsibility for it, which even includes, looking at these codes, even if you have that kind of knowledge, and making sure that everything you do transacts with, like you are taking a risk there. Unless
absolutely.
you literally break down and analyze the code before initiating any sort of transaction, which A, is very time consuming, and B, requires a very high level of knowledge, because how the hell, me and you trying to find that would be I don't know what we're looking for.
No.
And so it does highlight a problem in the space at the moment.
And I think that's what stood out to me is, as you say, I wouldn't feel like, but I know I wouldn't know what I'm looking for. You feel the same. But if you were to write down a list of 5 people that might know what they were looking for, Kevin Rose would be on that list.
Exactly.
So if it can happen to him, wow, it really could happen to anyone. But also, and he's done a good job since, from what I can tell, of helping to use this whole kind of talk about turning negatives into a positive, to use this to help his community, to help his proof holders, Moonbirds holders, learn the lesson with him. And he's, I haven't looked at it in great detail, but he's shared, I think, some tools and perhaps even kind of software that he's now incorporated that makes the whole thing kind of, sense checks every transaction or whatever it does. It kind of gives you more visibility and probably prompts you to just think and check, and which of course is a good thing.
It is, and I guess a positive of these negative situations is that it does act as a prompt and a driving force for this kind of innovation. Because now, when a serious person like that gets hacked, who's got both the reputation but also the resources behind them, it's a good reason to, okay, guys, we need to sort this out now, sooner rather than later. Let's actually drive forward. Let's make the innovation. Let's make it a little bit safer. And
it's a really helpful reminder. We sold an NFT last week for the first time in a long time, and so I listed it for sale, and it's held in our cold wallet, so it's on our ledger. And so because it's been such a long time since I've done any trading or anything on OpenSea, when I went to list it, it came up and I had to approve this transaction, and I thought, okay, done this bit before, that's fine. And then the second bit opened up, and I didn't recognize it. And I thought, this has changed since the last time I've done this. And then I just had this fear and worry. And then I thought to myself, what on earth am I doing? I'm doing this transaction out of my, cold storage ledger wallet, which has got all of our other valuable NFTs in. I'm like, this is stupid. I know this is not sensible. I nearly, thankfully I realized, and so hit cancel, ended the transaction, then did the sensible thing, which is the one NFT that we wanted to actually list for sale. I transferred it into a different wallet of mine. So a trade account, I just labeled it like trading account wallet, and it's the only NFT in there. So at least then I know that's the only one I'm risking. I want to list it for sale anyway. And so then went through the same process, listed it for sale, had to sign the transactions. Again, don't know what they all mean, but it reminds me of if you really thought about how dangerous everything is before doing it, you wouldn't even leave the house in the morning. You'd never cross the road. You'd never get on a plane. You'd never get behind the wheel of a car, right? But the fact is, life goes on. You've got to actually do stuff, right? And so, put it in this separate wallet, so that it was the only one that I had the potential to lose, listed it for sale, went to bed, woke up the next morning, it was sold. Happy days.
Smooth
but it was
transaction.
Smooth transaction. It was a real sort of reminder of, why would you do a transaction out of a wallet that holds anything that you're, that is valuable and you really don't want to risk? You don't have to trade from that wallet, and I think this was a weird thing that Kevin Rose was doing. And a lot of these kind of whales, these people with huge bags that hold millions and millions of pounds and dollars worth of NFTs in the one vault wallet. They often have it as their vault. And it's don't trade from the vault. Just move that one NFT into a different wallet, do the transaction from that wallet. So that was a helpful lesson for me, and I think that is certainly how we can all turn this horrible sort of negative into a positive.
I think the problem is that people can start doing a few transactions, or if you haven't been scammed before, and develop a sense of security and a sense of comfort, which ultimately leads to complacency, which ultimately then leads into an unfortunate situation. because there are many lessons in life that, unfortunately, you can tell people about them as much as you like, but they'll only truly learn it the hard way by experiencing it themselves.
Completely
and
agree.
I think in NFT land, we can do what we can. As humble messengers, Matt, we can warn our wonderful listeners and advise them on how to be secure, because we have gone through the pain ourselves. And hopefully they will listen. But even like Kevin Rose, as you said, he knows his stuff. Don't even know what he was doing, but playing around with a big Vault wallet, which is public with millions and millions of dollars of NFTs, is just a risky game. It's just a risky game. But of course, if you're doing any volume of transactions, which presumably he is on a fairly frequent basis, then you weigh up, okay, it's like the hassle versus the security, right? And that's always the trade-off for this kind of thing.
Exactly. And what do we know? Like, he might risk millions of dollars every day. Maybe he does. And there's that risk-reward kind of balance that he's probably fine with. Different in our world, where it's like, well, okay, that's worth quite a bit. Definitely not worth the risk. But there is that comfort factor. And the worst thing you can do, I think, is get comfortable.
Exactly.
I was really glad that we hadn't done it for such a long time. I felt very uncomfortable about doing it. And every transaction I've done with NFTs has been uncomfortable. I think that's one of the barriers to more people coming into it at the moment.
Huge barrier.
It really is uncomfortable. But we've been very fortunate and made a lot of money off it. And do you make a lot of money doing things you're only comfortable with doing? Potentially not. Exactly. They say the magic happens outside of your comfort zone, right?
Exactly.
It can't be ignored. But
100%.
He has, however, I've just noticed in the last couple of days, made himself feel a lot more comfortable, I'm sure, because one of the big, very recent sales of NFTs was by Kevin Rose himself, which is this hooded, so it's got the beanie cap, which is one of my favorite attributes. Beanie cap zombie punk, which he sold just a couple of days ago for, I think it was 857 ETH, which is equivalent to $1.4 million.
Wow, so he's had 2 million stolen, but then has sold one of his highly valuable ones for 1.4. Whilst that doesn't make the situation any better, it definitely does soften the blow, right?
Surely it does, especially because, so it was last sold on November 15th, 2020, presumably when he bought it, and he paid $18,000 for that punk. He held it for 2 years, and he made a 7,528% return, making $1.38 million in 2 years.
Pretty good trade.
Bad, right?
God, lucky man. Yeah, and it was interesting with his hack, because of course all of his squiggles that got taken, when the hacker stole them, what they immediately do is flood them onto the market, list all of his NFTs for really below the floor price, so that buyers absolutely snap it up immediately to obviously decrease their chances of being caught. And so he had a lot of really rare chromey squiggles, which would affect seriously high amounts, which some people now have been able to get their hands on for extremely low prices. And so I know that OpenSea, the platform where they were listed and sold, has a process for flagging these NFTs and preventing more sales. But it's a bit of an interesting conundrum, because if you were just a buyer and you saw this opportunity, not aware that it was stolen, then, is that your bad for buying it, and now you own a frozen asset?
I was reading a post on LinkedIn about that just earlier today, actually, because it depends. So they don't always get flagged immediately. So this girl, who I follow on LinkedIn, she had some NFTs stolen a few weeks ago. And because she is actually going through the process of trying to find them, going through the legal system to try and get something back, she's had them all flagged on OpenSea. And she has since been contacted by a lot of the people that now own them, who have been saying to her, can you remove the flag, because I now can't sell them. And I didn't know they were stolen before I bought it, so it's not my fault. And she's saying, well, okay. And she says on this post, she started to feel really guilty about it, because she's getting a little, bit of abuse for stopping them being able to do anything with it, because essentially they can't trade it at all whilst it's flagged, because that's one good thing potentially as the innocent buyer. Also, of course, to her point, potentially not an innocent buyer. Like, no one knows. She doesn't know. They could have been part of it the whole time. But they're, it's kind of starting to give her quite a bit of grief about taking kind of deflagging them so that they can trade them. And she's like, no, it's not going to happen, because she's and then she quoted some case history where not with NFTs but other property. If you are the buyer of stolen property, then you lose all. Even if you're an innocent buyer, you lose all rights to being able to sell it. It's not yours. They can have it back. All that sort of stuff. So it's very interesting. And if they are an innocent buyer, all you can do is feel sorry for them, I guess, in that situation, because they have spent their money on something that hopefully, as long as it is the case that at the time they didn't know it was stolen. Of course, usually from what I've seen, the hacker tends to sell them at a very low price compared with the floor price. So it's pretty obvious usually.
Especially when they're really rare assets that would be fetching significantly higher.
Because, of course, all they're trying to do is get the sale, get the money in as quickly as they can, and then they're gone. So if they're if something's worth 300 ETH and they're selling it for 250 even, or 225, you got to question, is this too good to be true? And even there, as an innocent buyer, if it's too good to be true, it's still too good to be true. And so I do think, I feel for this girl in this scenario where she's just trying to go through the legal process of trying to actually, get some help and claw something back from what she lost. But at the same time, if it is a completely sort of innocent purchase from the buyer, then it's harsh for them too. But goes back to this whole decentralized, there's no policing of it. It's tricky.
Exactly.
It's a whole new world.
Like the wild, wild west out there.
Whole new world.
Indeed. And so what we have seen unfold over the last few months, which I think is worth us touching on, is a pretty high profile scam. Potential scam. Not a scam, maybe a scam. Certainly some malpractice of sorts. And that is, of course, with Logan Paul, the man himself, and his Crypto Zoo project, which I think will be interesting because, of course, we are one of the 99 holders of his 99 Originals project. So we have a vested interest in Mr. Logan Paul. And so, of course, this is a perspective and opinion from two people who are, to a degree, pretty heavily invested in him and his current project. So, it was definitely a bit of a surprise, an unpleasant one at that, when the YouTuber CoffeeZilla released his 3-part series on YouTube to almost critical acclaim in terms of viewership numbers and reaction regarding Logan Paul's previous project, Crypto Zoo, and the kind of malpractice and so-called scam that had occurred here, where really the story goes, Logan Paul had this idea for this big project, obviously been approached by a few people in the NFT space during kind of the height of the hype, and so, influencer plus new technology bubble equals very attractive mix, and so no doubt he was getting proposition left, right, and center. Yeah. And so he agreed to do this Crypto Zoo project, went on his podcast Impulsive, and talked to high heavens about how innovative it was going to be, about how it was going to be the best project of his life, and all this fancy stuff, and really sold a lot of people on it. Then, of course, the project actually launches, and it's based around these NFTs of animals. You can buy different animals, merge them together, make new animals. So you could get my favorite is there's a lion and a blobfish, and then you merge the two, and it is very interesting. And, the tale of the story goes, you can watch the full thing on CoffeeZilla, but that the project did not deliver on a lot of its promises. And so it was meant to be this fully fledged game. To this day, the game is still not released. And so as a result, there's a lot of people that bought into the project, and the project has now basically lost almost all of its value. And so a lot of people who feel kind of potentially scammed. And so what CoffeeZilla untangles is this whole web of, development problems. The people that Logan Paul was working with turned out to have some criminal backgrounds, and this whole web of, not very good things, which he's now kind of seeking to rectify after firing off a pretty hot-headed initial response video where he was threatening to sue CoffeeZilla for defamation, and, it's pretty crazy. So if that is all very interesting, head over to YouTube and you can watch all of that stuff in real time. But obviously, as investors in his other project, the Originals project, I thought it'd be interesting to give our perspectives on watching that unfold and kind of what our thoughts are looking forward to the future with Logan Paul and his project and how we think he's going to handle it. So how did you feel when you saw that unfold?
Well, I think the interesting thing from my perspective was because we have the benefit of being in the Originals Discord where, you know, we are communicating directly with the man himself, Logan Paul. And there's one very vocal guy in there that really felt like the Originals DAO as a project itself should be quite vocal about how we feel about sort of doing right by the people that were sort of, you know, done out of a lot of money from the CryptoZoo project. So he was like pushing for Logan Paul, you got to make a statement. You got to do this. We should make a statement about the Originals so that we don't get dragged into it as well. And like he was really like, encouraging everyone to just like, we've got to do something. And it was interesting because the only thing that really was coming back from anyone on like the Logan Paul team was sort of we can't say anything. You know, it's being dealt with. There's like obviously there's a lot to this. There's proper legal routes that have to go through, and so the whole thing was like, you know, silence. You know, it's being dealt with. There's lawyers involved. The whole thing, as you would expect. You know, this is serious. It was millions of dollars worth of money. You know. So then to see the reply video, like which I thought was quite, you know, it wasn't that antagonistic. I don't think it was reasonably professionally done, but it was like a proper shot back, wasn't it? It was like, okay, well, I'm going to pick out, you know, this thing you got wrong, this thing you got wrong. As you said, I'm also going to like threaten to sue you for trying to drag my name through the mud. To see that, and then what? 2 weeks later, I think it was, like an apology video saying, actually, like, didn't mean that. Take back or sort of, he, you know, withdrew the comment about suing him, and just kind of go full circle. That was the weird bit for me. It was like, well, hang on a minute, how much legal advice were you getting in the beginning before you then said your reply, to then a couple of weeks later completely come back from a, you know, that was the odd bit. That was the odd bit. I think I did, you know, rightly or wrongly, and of course I'm biased, wanting it to not be as bad as, you know, CoffeeZilla made out, and just wanting him to actually follow through the project. You know, the only bit I didn't like, I remember saying to you at the time, was the kind of the end of that reply video that he made. Sort of said, the project's not dead. We're still working on it, and we will follow through with it in sometime in 2023 or 24. And I was like, okay, for me, if I've put significant chunk of money into that, that's just not long enough. It was like early. It was January, first 1 or 2 weeks in January. I think it was like the first week in January, 2023. So it's like, okay, you've now given yourself a whole 2-year window to follow through and actually do something that you were supposed to have done at some point last year. So like, how can it possibly take that long? Is that quite good enough? I didn't think so. But of course, I don't know like what actually fulfilling on the promises looks like, and kind of what it would take. But I obviously, you know, want it to not be as bad as CoffeeZilla made out, and I'm kind of an optimist from a sort of, because it will, you know, somehow or other, it will have an impact on the Originals DAO that we're part of. So yeah, I'd like to believe that that there's more to it. I don't know really, you know. It might sound weird because we've invested a fair chunk of money in Logan Paul now, but I don't know much about him whatsoever. I don't know, you know, I was not a follower of his and all that sort of stuff. I got sucked into his sort of, you know, our mutual friend Callum shared the details of the 99's Originals DAO in our little NFT WhatsApp group months and months and months ago, and I just saw it and thought, this looks super cool, would love to be involved in this, and then, you know, somehow we made it happen. But like, what I do know is from now following him, he is a very, very polarizing character, right? It just seems to be lots of people love him, but an equal amount of people absolutely hate him. And so it seems that he can never do right. Like, so I remain optimistic that there's some truth in what he said in terms of being let down by, malicious sort of, bad actors and all that sort of stuff. But still, of course, he has to take responsibility for his own part in it.
Exactly.
And it will be interesting now because, so the holders or some, it's not really clear at the moment, but some Crypto Zoo holders are suing him now for allegedly taking their money and all that sort of stuff. So it will be a very, very interesting few months, and it's interesting timing because we're hoping as part of the Originals DAO to actually get to meet the guys sometime soon within the next couple of months. So I'm not sure it'll be my opening question, but I'm sure I won't be the only one sort of wondering what's going on. And it will be a very interesting story to follow for sure.
It will. Yeah, I think it's definitely reinforced a big lesson from a investing standpoint. We always talk about betting on the jockey and not on the horse, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all well and good when the jockey's doing really well, but you also need to brace yourself for people who are liable to end up in situations which might not work out so favorably on them. And when a project's success is tied to an individual, that is the risk you take. And so that has been a good reinforcement of that lesson.
That is actually that is such a good point because this one, both projects, he has been the point man, right? It's all about him. Mm-hmm. That it's been his sort of brand, his personality, and you're right. That can work, but that can also go the complete opposite way. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, very good point.
I do think though that hopefully a lot of good will come of this because I also think trying to build, what he was trying to build with Crypto Zoo is an extremely complex project, both in terms of the scale of the NFTs, the artwork, but then also the functioning game and the mechanics. Like, that's a seriously big project and all the tokenomics behind it as well, because it had a special token. Yeah. And so I think there's a big case of biting off way more than you can chew and over-promising and obviously massively under-delivering, especially when it's headed up by people not particularly in the space, looking to capitalize on the hype and therefore lacking the proper almost project management development experience to bring such a complicated thing to life. And so whilst I think that has caused some issues, it looks like now he's on the right path in order to rectify those in whatever way he can. I do think what we have seen is, again, with these influencers when they have a big audience, pandering to what the general consensus is obviously a big thing. So he came out all guns fighting. Yeah. That didn't go down well. And so a complete U-turn once that was taken into consideration. So whilst he's on the right path now, it's kind of like, you had to get the angry mob out first to kind of get you there. Which again, is you can kind of understand why, and I can empathize with that to a degree. But, what's happened has happened and looks like he's going to try and fix it. I think what that has been helpful for the Originals and the implications there is actually quite good, because the truth is, since Originals has launched, not a lot has happened. I go as far as saying nothing has happened.
No, very true.
Apart from the chat in the Discord.
Yeah.
And so he is yet to fulfill on a lot of the promises from this. And now having such a huge public, moment of reckoning regarding his failure to deliver on a previous project.
Very true.
His now entire reputation is staked on also delivering for Originals. Yeah. Otherwise, he's going to do a lot of damage, probably irreparable damage from that sort of front. So I think he's now hopefully primed and ready to, metaphorically pull his finger out and deliver on everything for the Originals. And so hopefully what we'll see as the Originals holders are that a lot of stuff starts to happen and we see some of the value from, that we predicted we would see in our initial investment. Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there's two main things that people as a sort of, outsider to this can take from it, is firstly, if anyone does want to invest kind of 15, 20 plus ETH, then the Originals project is still out there, and perhaps, especially to that point, an investment with good potential. I think the second thing is, really, really remember this when thinking about what projects to get involved with, because any anyone like this that really does just focus and rely on the feelings, and it is just sort of perception and the feelings people have about one individual. If that really matters, to the tune of whatever amount you're going to put in, maybe that's a bit too risky, because thinking about it now, I definitely didn't think about that at the time, but it's a really good point. Investment in a business that doesn't have that one single identity, it doesn't play out quite the same way, right? I mean, some people, don't get me wrong, brands can be tarnished with that sort of negative sort of, and they can get a bad reputation. Of course they can. Mm-hmm. But actually, when it's all down to one person, the truth is you put your whole life in the control of that hands, right? And particularly if it's someone who has a tendency for controversial things, which, to be fair, Logan Paul has had probably one of the most controversial characters in recent history, is the truth of it, with some of those things that have happened in previous years. Which of course pays off from an entertainment perspective.
Absolutely.
And is why he's got the millions and millions of people watching him and following him.
Both ways, because it's also, yes, that's like probably the biggest risk, but it's also the biggest reason why it could be like one of the most successful projects, and why you could see such a significant return because of his level of influence. Like, we talk about how small the NFT market is at the moment, and when his stuff pops off, like when he published the Originals sort of documentary on YouTube, that's going out to an audience of 20 million, getting however many million views, which all of these other projects don't have. So it is a massive leg up from that front.
Absolutely. And you think about it, like from what he's doing with his Prime energy drinks, they've just signed they've now become the drink for the UFC, right? They've partnered with the UFC. They are now the official drink of the UFC, which, presumably just takes them into yet another, bigger league of just so good for that product and that brand. And as the Originals DAO, one of the benefits to the DAO holders will be at any point in the future, if Prime Energy Drinks sells or whatever, then whatever it is, 1% of his holdings or something, I can't remember the specifics, but we're tied into that, right? So
royalties,
so he grows that to, the next Red Bull or Luke, whatever, takes that to the next level. All Originals DAO holders are benefiting from that. And so he could, with his impact and positioning and all that sort of stuff, he could still get the results for sure. But I think it's a really, really, really helpful reminder, the point you make about when choosing where to put your money. Same thing about, or do you put it in Apple, or do you put it in Microsoft or whatever? If you were thinking about investing in companies with NFTs, if there is just that one person that it all relies on, you should. I didn't think about that, but it's a helpful thing to think about now for sure.
100%. So, any other bits, Matt, you want to wrap up with for this episode?
Well, there was one more big sale, which was interesting because it was almost the same value as the zombie punk that Kevin Rose just sold the other day. Even more recently than that, just I think it was yesterday. Jimmy, I think his proper name's Jimmy McNellis or something. He sold a gold fur ape. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, gold fur with the teeth all different colors,
the grills, the rainbow grills.
Sold that for 800 ETH. Wow. So again,
the market's flying at the moment.
Just unbelievable. And of course, it's led to lots of people sharing both pictures, ape next to punk, on their Twitter, on their Twitter posts, because there is this ongoing debate, which is better.
Battle of the NFT collection, battle of the titans in the NFT world.
So that's that was pretty good to see, and I think I only mention it because just the market that we're in, people obviously spending more money in January. It's just interesting because as this newsletter said the other day, is there a bit of a bounce back coming, or is this just just sort of a one-off or whatever? It seems that there is just so much more activity and big money being spent now compared with 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, that sort of thing.
Which is good, and hopefully we'll see it sort of continue to pick up. Because the whole market, in truth, over the last few weeks has had a very nice little bounce back. fact, if you bought Ethereum on the 28th of December, you'd be 60% up right now.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And so, yeah, long may that continue. Hopefully we'll continue to see these big sales. I'm very enthused and, have certainly got my investor and purchasing hat on now, because we definitely have some decisions as to how we want to allocate the remainder of our capital in our DAO to, make the most of this buyer's market. And hopefully we'll be talking about the 800 ETH sale that we've made in no time. So
I think just one last thing I noticed, which is just fun for like the NFT market, and I think it has to be unique to NFTs, right? So there's a guy that I follow on Twitter, and he created this image, and I don't know whether I'll be able to. For anyone watching on the camera, they'll be able to zoom in and see. Hopefully, it's just a mint leaf, right? So he minted this mint leaf, right? So presumably took a picture of it and just minted it as an NFT, but it was a free mint, right? So literally a free mint, and he's a very, very well-known sort of. How many followers does this guy have? I don't know, because that's his picture. This is a screenshot I took, so I don't know how many followers he's got, but a lot, right? And so he just issued this as you can claim it as a free mint, and 178 million of these were claimed, right? So he ran it for, I think it was open for like a week or two. Nearly 3,000 collectors have claimed 178 million of them.
Oh my God.
Which, it's just the scale of that is just nuts. And now, because it was a finite period, so you can't mint one now. But of course, you can now buy them on secondary. And they are already selling for, I think I checked the other day, and I think at first they were like $7 each. They now might be up to like closer to $20 or something crazy. So
Gosh,
they were completely free to begin with.
Giving it a ridiculous market cap.
Just unbelievable. And it was all just like, and then the beauty of it is, and again, I don't know enough about this, but well worth a Google or just a look on Twitter, because he's now got some sort of iteration of it, and then another one, and then another one, and now he's really starting to build some value into that whole project, which started off as this free mint that you could just claim, and lots of people did multiple times to the tune of 178 million of them. And then now, they're trading on the secondary market, and then the holders are being kind of, I don't know, given free mint pass and this, that, and the other, and it's just become its own little economy, which, sadly I missed the boat on. But these opportunities exist right now in this market. There's no downside. Just like find out about it, claim the free mint, claim it again, just look out for it.
1,000,
you know what I mean?
$10 each.
Just look out for it. You never know. If it doesn't turn into anything, what did you lose? You lost like 10 minutes, half an hour, claiming a load of free stuff that is just going to sit in your wallet and do nothing. So I just remain like, so much conviction on it is worth spending some time following people, reading, learning, doing your own research, just participating in the world of NFTs.
100%. Well, a lovely place to finish the episode, Matt. So to all of our listeners, thank you again for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. Don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe. Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. As always, any closing remarks?
Just good to be back. Looking forward to the next time. We have an interview coming up.
Yes, special guest on the 21st of February.
Very much looking forward to that. So, it's good to be back in the room doing this in person. And I think there really is some exciting times ahead with NFTs. So I hope some people are listening. I hope you are doing your own research and considering getting involved because, as I keep saying, it's a land of opportunity.
Lovely stuff. Matt, thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. And as always, to the moon.